Our very life and our ability to see the signs of God are said to be through water. Water is named explicitly in the Quran as an ayah, as a sign of God, some 60 times in verses like this. Your God is one God. There is no deity other than God. God, the most gracious and merciful. In the waters which God sent down from the sky, giving life thereby to earth after it was dead. And in all of this, there are signs for those who use their intelligence. Within this Quranic context, water is described as being sent down from the heavens in the same way that God's mercy and indeed Scripture are sent down, tanzil. It makes sense that in the arid climate of Arabia, the life-giving quality of rain would be seen as an all-too-real symbol of God's mercy. The great scholars of Islam have seen these verses as both literally referring to water and also spiritually referring to mercy and knowledge. One example will suffice. Within the Quran, we have a verse that states, God sends down water from the sky, and the once dry valleys run high, each according to its capacity. The great scholar Abu Hamid Muhammad al-Ghazali in the Mishkat al-Anwar interprets the above in a metaphorical fashion. He states that the waters that are sent down correspond to ma'rifah, intimate knowledge of God, and the once dry valleys are none other than our very hearts. It is this same imagery that has led Sufis to talk about water of life, al-hayat, to symbolize the highest level of spiritual attainment. Let's speak again about Mawlana Jalaluddin Rumi. In the Masnavi, he says, citing from the Prophet said, among my people, there are some who are one with me in nature. Their spirit holds me by the same light that I hold them. Without knowing my traditions, they drink the water of life. To put in other words, our very hearts and our capacity to know God intimately are connected by Rumi to the external symbols of life-giving water. As outside, so inside. As below, so above. The Quran is not a science book, and while it contains what I believe can be referred to as an eco-spiritual ethic, it is not a modern scientific environmental textbook. What it does is to establish a close relationship between the natural phenomena, the signs of God, the divine himself, and us. For example, when Moses is told in the Quran to strike the rock with his staff, and this leads to the gushing forth of 12 rivers, the subsequent verse identifies that these rocks are in fact us. The next verse compares those rocks to our own hearts by saying, so eat and drink of God's sustenance, and do no evil, and spread no mischief on earth. And then even after that, your hearts grow hard, so they were like those rocks, or even harder. Indeed, there are some rocks, some hearts, from which rivers gush forth. We know that in the Islamic tradition, ablution is a necessary aspect of prayer. And the bath ablution, the ghusl, is also seen as physically purifying the form. This accounts for the importance of water fountains, or sabils, all over traditional Islamic cities, as well as hammams, or traditional baths. To give one example about the beautiful city that we're in, Istanbul, the greatest architect that Islam has ever known, Mimar Sinan, he alone established 33 hammams over the Ottoman empires. Now, within the Islamic tradition, there are references to the function of water, not just here on earth, but also in paradise. God's throne itself, in fact, is told to be established over water. The prophet is given the fountain of Kosar, and within the Shi'i tradition, it is the family of the prophet who provide water from that fountain to the thirsty in the Day of Judgment. But probably the most crucial imagery of water in the Quran is that of paradise. Paradise is most repeatedly described in the Quran as a garden in which rivers flow. 4 rivers are named. The parable of paradise, in which the God-conscious are promised, is one in which there are 4 rivers. The rivers of water, which time does not corrupt. The rivers of milk, the taste of which never alters. The rivers of wine, delightful to those who drink. And rivers of honey, of all impurities cleansed. As Jamal Sargut, who's with us today, has stated, each of these rivers can be taken both literally and metaphorically. The rivers of pure life are for humility, always flowing from that which is high to that which is low, and smoothing all harshness on their way. The river of milk is for ilm ladunni, knowledge from divine presence. For that knowledge comes from the murshid, the guide, like the mother's milk. The rivers of wine is that of divine love. And the river of honey is that of tawheed, of bringing together all of these qualities in the perfected human being. When we have a taste of all of this, it gives us a taste of paradise. So let me conclude. The perfect human being that the Islamic tradition speaks of lives not in paradise, but here on earth. And what is to be the eco-spiritual, ethical duty of those who aspire to be fully human today? If the battles of the 20th century were largely over oil, it is possible that many of the battles of the 21st century will be over water. Unless we can rise above our respective and collective selfishness and develop an ethic of generosity, humility, and hospitality. At the end of the day, water belongs not to us, but to God. This has been referred to in the tradition of the Prophet Muhammad, stating that 3 items are not private property, but collective property: water, fire, and pasture. The Prophet also states that if there is excess water for one group of people, that is to be given freely to others, not even sold. One of the realities that connects us to the planet is that we're both made out of water, and both the being of the human and the being of the planet contains 70% water. It is through water that God creates the human, and it is this trusteeship that we show when we come to share water as members of one human community. May we always be like this water, reflecting the heavens, flowing from the high ground to the low ground, purifying and smoothing. May we be like this, coming from the heavens and flowing back into the oceans, which in reality are all connected, the oceans of oneness. Thank you.
We would like to thank from the North Carolina University at Chapel Hill. As you see, he was speaking so peacefully. 8:30 in the morning.